My name is Emma, and I'm 30 years old. That courtroom felt like a circus, and I was the clown everyone came to watch. 20 people were laughing at me like I'd told the funniest joke in history. The judge was wiping his eyes because he thought mocking me was hilarious. My own mom and dad sat there grinning like they just won a giant prize. And honestly, in their minds, they already had. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments and smash that subscribe button. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by people who were supposed to protect you, you need to hear how this story ends. Trust me, it's going to blow your mind. Let me take you back to when everything started. I was 5 years old, sitting on my bed while my parents threw clothes into my little purple backpack. "Grandma Elizabeth wants you to visit her farm for a bit," Dad said, barely looking at me. "Just for a little while, sweetie," Mom added. That little while turned into 23 years. Best thing that ever happened to me, though. My parents, Michael and Susan Carter, weren't monsters. They were just lazy. They loved the idea of looking successful but hated actually working for it. When I was born, Grandma Elizabeth could already see the truth about her son. Dad loved starting projects but never finished a single one. Mom was pretty and charming but treated responsibility like a scary monster. Grandma noticed things nobody else did. I'd come to Sunday dinners with my shoes on the wrong feet because nobody checked. My hair was always messy because nobody bothered to brush it. I wasn't being hurt, just forgotten like a plant in the corner that sometimes got water. "How would you feel about staying at my farm, sweetheart?" Grandma asked me one summer afternoon. I was 6 then, old enough to know when someone was saving me. "Can I bring my stuffed rabbit?" "Yes." "Of course you can, honey." That conversation changed my entire life. Within weeks, I was living with Grandma Elizabeth full-time. My parents would show up on Christmas and birthdays, take photos to look like perfect parents, then vanish back to their parties and shopping trips. They got to look good without doing any of the hard work. Grandma Elizabeth was everything they weren't. She was there every single day, asked about my feelings, and actually listened to my answers. She taught me how to bake bread, helped me with my math homework, and never made me feel like I was bothering her. When I joined the school debate team, she drove me to every single competition. When I said I wanted to become a lawyer, she smiled so big and said, "Now that's a Carter with brains." The day my Harvard acceptance letter arrived, I called my parents immediately. Dad's first words: "How much is this going to cost your grandmother?" Not "congratulations." Not "we're proud of you." Just worry about money that wasn't even his. Living with Grandma was like having your own personal cheerleader who happened to have $30 million in the bank. Not that she showed off. She drove the same old truck for 20 years and fixed her own fence posts. "Money is just a tool, Emma," she'd tell me. "The second it becomes who you are, you've lost what really matters." My parents never learned that lesson. They lived in a house Grandma bought them, drove cars she paid for, and went to fancy parties on her credit card. They were professional grandkids, basically. "Your father has such big dreams," Grandma would say with sad eyes. "He just needs the right opportunity." But 45 years old and still looking for his big break. Meanwhile, Mom ran a book club for rich ladies and called it her career. The books were always thin with big letters. But here's what my parents didn't understand. Grandma was watching everything. She saw how they forgot my birthday 4 years in a row. She noticed how they'd bring expensive gifts for each other to family events and some cheap toy for me they grabbed at the last minute. "Do they ever call just to talk?" Grandma asked when I was 13. "Mom texted yesterday," I lied. "About what, honey?" "Just stuff." She knew I was lying. I knew she knew. But Grandma was too kind to push. Instead, she just made sure I never felt that empty space. She paid for art classes, summer camps, and SAT prep. She showed up to every parent-teacher meeting and took notes like my education actually mattered to her. 'Cause it did. When I started at Harvard, Grandma insisted on driving me herself. "First Carter to go to an Ivy League school," she said proudly. "Your parents couldn't come. Your dad has a meeting, your mom has her book club." Me. I just shrugged. They're busy. Everyone's busy, sweetheart. It's about what you choose to make time for. During that long drive, she first mentioned her plans. I've been thinking about what happens when I'm gone, she said casually. Grandma, you're going to live forever, I protested. Maybe, maybe not. But when that day comes, I want my money going to the right person. Someone responsible. Thought she meant Dad. Shows how much I knew back then. At Harvard, I studied like my life depended on it. Corporate law, tax codes, estate planning, everything. Grandma visited every semester, sitting in the back during my practice trials with tears of pride in her eyes. My parents came to graduation but showed up half an hour late and left during the speech. Mom complained about the uncomfortable seats the entire time. Dad was on his phone planning another failed business idea. Harvard Law, top of your class, Grandma said at dinner that night. I'm so incredibly proud of you. My parents nodded like I'd announced I learned to tie my shoes. That should have warned me about what was coming. Grandma Elizabeth died on a Monday morning in April. Peaceful in her sleep, no warning. She was just gone. I was 28, working at a small law firm in Boston. The call came from her neighbor at 7 in the morning. Emma dear, I think you should come home now. I drove those 5 hours in complete silence. My parents were already at her farmhouse when I arrived, going through her desk like vultures. Oh, sweetheart, Mom said, hugging me without any real feeling. We're all just devastated. What are you doing? I asked, watching Dad flip through papers. Just organizing things, he said coldly. Someone has to handle the details. The funeral was too fancy. Grandma would have hated it. She wanted a simple service at the little country church. But Mom insisted on the expensive casket, imported flowers, and the big cathedral downtown. She deserves the best, Mom kept repeating. I wondered whose money she planned to use. After the service, strangers kept telling me stories about Grandma's secret kindness. How she paid hospital bills for sick neighbors. How she funded scholarships for poor kids. I'd lived with her for 23 years and didn't know half of it. She thought you were going to change the world, Mr. Peterson from church told me. Always bragging about her brilliant granddaughter. Meanwhile, my parents were across the room accepting sympathy like they'd lost their best friend instead of the woman who paid their bills for decades. The lawyer scheduled the will reading for the next Tuesday. Standard procedure, he explained. Nothing unusual. But I noticed my parents whispering in corners, conversations that stopped dead when I walked in. Are you worried about something? I asked Dad that Sunday. Worried? Oh no. Just lots to figure out. Property, investments, it's complicated. I could help. I do this for a living. That's sweet, honey, but this is family business. Family business. Like I wasn't family. Like 23 years of being more granddaughter than daughter meant nothing. Monday night I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. My parents were acting strange, too careful with words, too interested in my schedule. When I mentioned taking time off work to help with Grandma's affairs, Dad practically jumped. No need. We'll handle everything. I lived here too. This was my home. Of course, sweetheart. But you have your career. Grandma wouldn't want you putting that on hold. Since when did they care about my career? They'd never cared before. That's when it hit me. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about me getting involved in something they wanted to control themselves. The will reading was at 3 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. I wore the blue dress Grandma bought me for law school graduation. Professional, respectful, ready. I should have worn battle armor. Ever had someone you trusted completely betray you so badly it physically hurt? Drop a comment if you know that pain. The lawyer, Mr. James, had known our family forever. He looked uncomfortable as he spread papers across his desk. My parents sat across from me with blank faces. This is unusual, Mr. James began, adjusting his glasses nervously. Elizabeth made big changes to her will over the last 3 years. My heart sank. Changes meant trouble. The primary person receiving the estate is Emma Carter, age 28, currently living in Boston. Silence. Complete silence. I stared at Mr. James, certain I'd heard wrong. My parents' blank expressions cracked. "I'm sorry, what?" Dad said, his voice shaking. "The estate totals approximately $4.8 million, Mr. James continued. Emma inherits 95%. Mom's hand went to her chest. 95%. The remaining 5% is split between Michael Carter and several charities. 5%. After 45 years of being the golden son, Dad got 5% of his mother's fortune. That's about $240,000. Nice money, sure, but not the millions he'd been expecting his whole life. "This is a mistake," Dad said, leaning forward. "My mother always said the money would be divided equally." "Mrs. Elizabeth was very clear," Mr. James replied. "She felt Emma showed the responsibility and wisdom necessary to honor her legacy." I sat there in shock. $4.8 million. More money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes. And it came from the only person who truly loved me. "This is insane," Mom exploded. "She's just a child. She has no business experience. She's 28 with a Harvard law degree," Mr. James said calmly. "A degree doesn't mean she understands managing money." Dad added. "Both things your mother felt Emma possessed," Mr. James said. The meeting dragged on for another hour. My parents' shock turned to anger, then to cold determination. I could see them planning. Legal challenges. Competency hearings. Whatever it took to steal Grandma's money. "The will goes through probate, of course," Mr. James mentioned. "Standard process. The court validates everything before money transfers." "How long does probate take?" Mom asked sweetly. 6 months to a year, depending on complications." They were already planning complications. That night, my parents invited me to dinner at the country club. "We should talk as a family," they said. I should have seen the trap. "We want to challenge the will," Dad said over appetizers. "Not because we're greedy, but because we're worried about you." "Worried about me?" "Sweetheart, you're 28, Mom said. "You've never managed anything bigger than a checking account. This kind of money attracts dangerous people. What are you suggesting?" "A trust," Dad explained. "With experienced trustees. Your mother and me. We'd manage everything until you're older and ready." I put my fork down slowly. "Ready for what?" "To handle this level of responsibility." Grandma meant well, but she wasn't thinking straight at the end. Actually, Grandma had been thinking more clearly than ever. She saw exactly who they were and protected me from beyond the grave. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully. "But I can handle my inheritance just fine." Their faces hardened. The loving parent act vanished. "We'll see about that," Dad said quietly. That's when I knew. War was coming. The legal papers arrived 3 weeks later. My parents were contesting the will, claiming Grandma had been manipulated and that I was too inexperienced to manage money. Their lawyer was expensive, the kind you hire when you're already spending money you expect to win. "This is normal in family disputes," my lawyer Sarah explained. "But the will was clear. Your grandmother was mentally sharp when she made these decisions. They're arguing otherwise. They claim she was unduly influenced by someone with financial motives. Someone meaning me." The irony was thick. My parents had lived off Grandma's money for decades while contributing nothing, and they were accusing me of manipulation. But here's the interesting part. During probate, all estate money is frozen. That meant my inheritance was locked away, but it also meant my parents couldn't touch it either. Unfortunately, it also meant my savings account got flagged because Grandma had made deposits over the years for tuition and gifts. "Your personal account is connected to estate assets," Mr. James explained. "The court wants to verify there's no mixing of funds." Perfect. While my parents continued living in their paid-for house with their paid-for cars, I was suddenly broke. Really truly broke. Like eating instant noodles for every meal broke. That's when my college friend Jessica called with an offer. She was opening a small coffee shop near campus and needed help. "Just temporary," she said. A few shifts until I can hire permanent staff. I can't pay much, she warned. Right now I'd wash dishes for free coffee, I told her honestly. And that's what I did. Jessica's coffee shop was tiny, maybe 10 tables, serving students and locals. I worked evening shifts 4 times a week, taking orders and cleaning tables. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work that paid my rent. The job was actually healing. After months drowning in legal documents and family betrayal, there was something pure about making coffee and chatting with customers. No hidden agendas. No manipulation. Just simple human connection. You seem different from most lawyers, one regular customer said. How so? More normal. More human. If only he knew. I'd been working at the shop for about 2 months when disaster struck. I was refilling napkins when I spotted a familiar couple at table 6. Not regulars but faces I recognized. The Johnsons, family friends who'd been at Grandma's funeral. They were staring at me with shock and pity. Mrs. Johnson approached when I brought their bill. Emma dear, is that you? Hi, Mrs. Johnson. How are you? I'm fine, but... Are you working here? Her eyes took in my stained apron and tired face. Just helping a friend, I said casually. Oh, how nice. But her expression screamed otherwise. It screamed she was already planning the phone call she'd make. 2 days later, Mom called. Emma, we need to talk. The ambush came dressed as Sunday dinner. My parents invited me over, claiming they wanted to discuss settling things peacefully. What they really wanted was to present evidence that I was unfit to manage millions. We heard you're working as a waitress, Mom said over store-bought lasagna. I'm helping a friend with her coffee shop, I corrected. Serving coffee and wiping tables, Dad clarified. Honest work. Of course, dear. But it raises questions about your judgment, about managing significant money. What questions? Well, Mom looked at Dad. If you had real business sense, wouldn't you be using this time better? Building connections, maybe. Instead of living off Grandma's money for decades like you mean. The room temperature dropped to freezing. We never took handouts, Dad said stiffly. Grandma was generous with family. Is that different from me inheriting money she wanted me to have? That's enough, Mom snapped. This attitude proves our point. This anger toward family isn't healthy. You know what's unhealthy. 2 adults suing their daughter because they can't accept that Grandma finally saw them clearly. The mask fell completely. No more concerned parents. Just pure greed. You don't deserve that money, Dad said quietly. You didn't build it. You didn't earn it. And you earned it by being a disappointment for 45 years. We'll see what the court thinks about your fitness to inherit, Mom said, standing up. Especially when they see how you're living now. They had photos. Mrs. Johnson had been thorough, taking pictures of me in my coffee shop apron, looking exhausted and messy. Perfect evidence of my supposed poor judgment. The court will see these, Dad said, sliding the photos across the table. Along with witnesses testifying about your recent struggles. I looked at the images. I looked like exactly what I was, a young woman working honestly to pay bills. But through their lens, I looked like someone who couldn't handle money. You know what? Said, standing up. You're absolutely right about one thing. What? I'm not the daughter you raised. The daughter you raised would have handed over the money by now. She would have apologized for Grandma loving her more. But the granddaughter Grandma raised, she doesn't quit. And she definitely doesn't surrender to bullies. We'll see about that, Mom called after me. Yes, I said. We will. The court date was set for the following month. My parents were confident. After all, what judge would trust millions to a woman who couldn't even afford to stop waitressing during her inheritance fight? They had no idea what was coming. Have you ever been so underestimated it actually worked in your favor? Comment below because you're about to see how wrong they were about everything. 3 days before court, my lawyer Sarah gave me advice that changed everything. Bring your phone, she said matter-of-factly. Record everything. Is that legal? Connecticut is a one-party consent state. You can record any conversation you're part of. And trust me, you want a record. So there I was, sitting outside the courthouse at 9 in the morning, checking my phone's recording app. 20 years ago, you needed special equipment to catch people being awful. Now everyone carries the tools in their pocket. My parents had arrived early in Dad's BMW, the one Grandma co-signed for, just until Michael gets back on his feet. That was 9 years ago. They'd brought backup. Aunt Rachel, Uncle Tom, even my cousin Daniel, who I hadn't seen since high school. Nothing says loving family like bringing an audience to watch you destroy your daughter. Sarah met me at the courthouse steps. Ready. Like I'm about to watch my parents try to steal millions while claiming it's for my protection. Are you prepared? I patted my phone in my pocket. More than they realize. The courthouse was old and intimidating. Marble everywhere, dark wood, portraits of stern judges. The kind of place designed to make regular people feel small and powerless. Good thing I wasn't regular people anymore. My parents' lawyer was a man named Richard Stone, probably 60, with silver hair and a suit worth more than most cars. He had that specific arrogance that comes from winning through intimidation instead of skill. "Miss Carter," he said, approaching with a fake smile. "I hope we can keep things civil today." "I'm always civil, Mr. Stone. Sometimes aggressively so." His smile faltered. "Your parents hope to avoid a prolonged battle. Perhaps we can reach a settlement." "You mean perhaps I'll give up and let them steal Grandma's money? Perhaps we can find a solution that works for everyone." I looked past him to where my parents sat whispering with their family support system. "Mr. Stone, the solution that works for everyone is the one Grandma already chose. It's called her will. We'll see what the court thinks." Oh, we definitely would. At 10 o'clock sharp, the bailiff called our case. Carter versus Carter. Probate matter 2024-2156. Here we go, I thought, discreetly starting my recording app. Time to see exactly how low my parents would sink. Spoiler alert. Lower than the ocean floor.